Calling all entrepreneurs seeking smart new ways to growth hack their way to a more perfected type of lifestyle. The Tropical Entrepreneur Show is your destination. Now here's your host, Josh Denning.
Josh Denning, back to the mission of helping you get more customers that spend more money more often, and also lighting the pathway for you to become a market authority. And to that aim, we're lucky to have Derek Lewis with us today. So it's set to be a great show, because Derek is in fact a business ghostwriter, and he's worked with thought leaders from 5 continents on books spanning from technology, leadership, economics. He's done stuff for the International Monetary Fund, or you might know as IMF, for SAP, for Daimler Chrysler, Walmart, Microsoft, Disney, even the Red Cross. He's also the author of the Business Book Bible, which is an authoritative source on how to write a business book, something that I too recommend that everyone gets done as soon as they possibly can, is really your best modern business card in a sense to really pin you up as that authority. And he also holds a master's in economic development and lives in Baton Rouge with his wife and 2 children. So we're going to cover today a really useful and valuable topic to anyone looking to become an authority, whether that be living location independent like me or just a bigger authority in your market. So we're looking at the all-important area of authority content development, which is really interesting area and very, very important area for today. So yeah, I think it's a pen and paper interview, and one that I think you'll take a lot of value from. So let's welcome Derek. Thanks for joining us, Derek.
It's my pleasure, Josh. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I've given everyone a little bit of an overview of yourself and what we're going to cover, but I'd love to hear, I guess, the elevator pitch on the value that you provide to the market, mate.
Well, Josh, the ultimate marketing tool for any entrepreneur, for any authority, for anyone really, employee or otherwise, is their own book. It's some people started calling it the new business card. And Josh, if you've been in business for 5 years or more, you know enough to write at least a short little book, I promise. And once you write the book on something, we have a saying: whenever somebody's the authority, or whenever somebody really knows what they're doing, we say kind of offhand, well, they really wrote the book on whatever it is. Well, that comes from the idea that if you really actually write the book on it, then you're the one and only. You're the only source to go to. So I am a bit biased because I'm a business ghostwriter of full-length books, but I think that they are one of the most powerful tools you'll ever have in your toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, I totally 100% agree with you. But just on that, let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. What are some of the reasons, that you think a business owner should write a book, and what are some of the really core benefits of getting a book done?
It's a great question. There was a consulting group, I think Wellesley Hills, a few years ago. They did a survey of 200 business authors and asked them, what was your experience writing the book? And overwhelmingly, more than 90% of the authors came back and said that writing a book had a quote, significant positive impact on their business. And the major benefits were being able to sell to clients more easily, being able to justify higher fees, being able to close clients more easily, being able to find more lucrative speaking engagements, and generally receiving more respect and recognition in their industry. So one of the myths about writing a business book is that it's a moneymaker. And Josh, business books by and large are not. Other books, fiction or crime novels or maybe some biographies, they might be a standalone commercial product, but a business book really is about marketing your other services and establishing your expertise. So it's you can't look at it as a return on investment in and of itself. It's a marketing investment, just like a website or just like advertising or just like business cards. You don't expect to sell business cards. I mean, you give them away in hopes that somebody will contact you. That's the same way with a business book. And even for people who aren't ready to do a full-length book because it's a serious undertaking, just having even stepping down to a booklet or an ebook or a PDF report or something along those lines, maybe something that's more short form. Even that can help establish your expertise and your authority. And it's if you write a short PDF and then you print it out in a good booklet, even that's more powerful to give out at networking events or to send to potential clients than just we'll go look at my website or download a podcast that I've done. I mean, all of those other things are important pieces, but having something in writing actually is there's no replacement for it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just before we dive a little deeper into a lot of those areas, which I'm very excited and looking forward to diving into, and for the listener, of course, again, I really also personally recommend getting a book done as one of the most important pieces of your marketing collateral. But I've got to ask you, Derek, the question that I always ask everybody at the beginning of the show, and that's if you really had to put all of your knowledge and everything that you've learned over the last years into a chapter, namely of a book, that you're sharing with other experts, and you knew this book was really going to be an important piece that was given to 10,000 young entrepreneurs to really help them get their careers started, to help them kick their life off as entrepreneurs. What would you call? What would you name your chapter, and what would be the core message that you'd want to teach those 10,000 young entrepreneurs?
Josh, in my life, coming across knowledge, a tip, this is how to do, marketing, this is how to approach clients, this is how to, to write a great headline. Those things have all been helpful. But if I'm really thinking about over the long term, knowledge really isn't that important. What's really made the difference in my life is being inspired. And so if I had to write one chapter in a book that was going out to entrepreneurs all over the world, the chapter, it would really consist of inspiration. It would talk about believing in yourself. It would talk about having faith in your abilities. It would talk about being able to rebound from failures. It would talk about what to do whenever things were bleak and the outlook was awful. The chapter title, it would probably something about probably business inspired. So I truly believe that each of us have incredible talents and abilities and knowledge and skills that other people need and want and are willing to pay for. I think that the challenge is in finding the market and finding a way to sell to that market in a way that lets you fulfill your purpose while at the same time making a great living from it. So I would encourage people to look for that, to not be content until they had found that, and then to keep working at it until they found a way to make a living, having a great time while they're at it.
Yeah, it's so true. There's even when you find that thing that really inspires you, you're still gonna have days where it's still a challenge, and sometimes even though deep down you still love it, it might become boring, or there are always aspects of it that are difficult and are a struggle. So if you haven't found that thing that's ultimately inspiring, it becomes compounded 10 times more. I think that's really is so important that you try to find that thing that really makes you excited 80% of the time at least anyway. So I think that's a big one, Derek. So I want to ask you as well, having quite a lot of experience about books and business books and using them as marketing tools, just before we jump into talking about authority content and how people can get build themselves into an authority creating. the kind of content like we're doing now with podcasts and blog posts and everything like that. But when a business owner or someone who has a business or is looking to launch themselves as a consultant or a coach or what have you is trying to find that topic to write around, do you think, like, should the topic be quite crystal clearly about, their educationally about their services that they provide? So an educational journey into, do it yourself around their services, that kind of thing. Or should they kind of find to make it more impactful, a more interesting angle that, so for example, right now, even though my primary area is SEO, that's what we're the biggest experts at in my digital agency. That's we're better at that than anything else. We do pay-per-click as well and social, but we're best at content-driven SEO. Should I be writing about SEO, for example, or should I be writing something like a book called Authority that's like all about becoming an authority, for example?
Great question. So if we were talking about authority content, blog posts and podcasts and everything, that would be another discussion. But if we're talking about a book, if we're talking about a full-length business book, something that's going to be with you for years and that you're really going to kind of build it's going to be a cornerstone of your marketing for the foreseeable future, then Josh, it's a very different medium and it's a very different approach. So this is what I believe. And what I'm about to say is I found the same to be true for authors all over the world. Stephen King believes this. Stephen Pressfield, one of the best books on creativity and artists, and especially for authors and entrepreneurs, is Turning Pro and the War of Art. He believes this. A number of others. The book that we want to write is already in our heads. So as we go through our lives, and like I said, if you've been in business for any amount of time, 5 years, or especially 10 years, if you're in your early 30s, you've had a decade of adult experience and probably professional experience, and all of that has been bubbling and simmering and rolling around in the back of your mind, in your subconscious, if you will. There is a great book in there. If you feel any inkling at all to write a book, that's your subconscious telling you, hey, I put together some great stuff. I'm ready for you to take it out and share it with the world. Our job as authors, and my job as a ghostwriter is kind of like being a midwife for this process, to help people get everything that's in their subconscious out onto paper in one piece. So to go back and to specifically answer your question, with a full-length business book, you don't really start out with what should my book be about. You start out by doing basically getting everything out of your subconscious to figure out what has my subconscious already written a book about. And after you get it all out on paper, then you start seeing what the book is about. So with my clients, for instance, they come to me and there's not a one of them that said, I know exactly what I want to write. This is what, it's going to be about. These are the topics. These are the chapter headings. They come to me saying, I know I want to write a book. I know that I know enough to write a book, but I don't really know exactly what the book's supposed to be about. So we have to go through that process of getting all of that out on paper to figure out, what, it's not really a how-to manual that you had in mind. The content is the same, but it's a leadership book. Or, what, it's not really a book on presentations. It's really a book more on how to figure out the insights that drive those presentations. So, Josh, for you, just listening to you right here, I think that authority is probably closer to your heart. And so that's probably what your subconscious has been working on. So if you started just writing down some of your random thoughts and stories and anecdotes that you had, which you would probably find, I would guess, is a book that probably deals more with authority than it really does a how-to SEO book.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think if I was to look at all the study I've done and the work I've done and what I'm trying, well, not trying, but implementing successfully for clients, it's definitely more about, the SEO is a cornerstone of it, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's audience research and producing cornerstone content. And yes, it's all got to be tagged and optimized, and we've got to build authority backlink, profiles and everything. But so that's interesting. So for the listeners though as well that have got that book inside them, for you it's not about, they shouldn't try to, because which I think a lot of people lose a lot of time on. They don't necessarily have to figure out that exact topic or niche right away. They just need to maybe start mind mapping out, or even just legal patent penning out all the different ideas and things that are in their head, get a lot of it down on paper, and then slowly mold it into a book and figure out backwards from there what the topic was.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you talk about getting a pad and paper. Josh, the way that whenever I sit down to write my own book, I thought that I was writing basically a second edition of my first little ebook, How Business Authors Work with Ghostwriters. And as I sat down with paper and as I started writing, I realized what I was really writing more about was how somebody else could write their business book. Not really anything to do with ghostwriting, but about how, somebody like yourself would sit down and do exactly what I teach my authors to do. Well, I ghostwrite for my authors. I coach others. So what I teach my coachees to do. And so, after I'd gotten all this content down, Josh, I realized that I really had a book and a half in there. So I had to take out all the stuff about ghostwriting and working with ghostwriters and whatever. And that's going to be another little book that I've already got together. But after I took all of that other content out, what I was left with was the beginnings of the book that I eventually wrote, the Business Book Bible. So how to actually write your own business book. And so sitting down and just writing free form, not really planning it out, not getting hung up on, should I say it this way or should I say it that way? Does this go in the book or not? You just concentrate on letting all of that stuff get out of your head and onto paper. Then after it's on paper, you can figure out what your book's really about. And like happened to me, like's happened to a number of my authors. We figure out some of this content, you can use elsewhere. It might be good for the beginnings of another book or for, an ebook or maybe even some blog posts. But this right here, this is the core of the book.
Awesome stuff. So look, we will, I think, come back to a little bit more about that, or we might even do another episode just down the track a little bit on writing books and getting them ghostwritten and everything. If you want to, Derek, I think the audience would definitely love it. But this episode, we did want to talk more about how experts, how anyone looking to live the tropical entrepreneur lifestyle can start to get their authority profile together and the content that goes along with that. So before we really dive deep into the topic, maybe you can just give an overview, Derek, in your opinion of what is authority content and what does an authority content platform kind of look like?
Well, again, I'm going to be biased because my natural ability is in writing, and so that's where I put most of my time. So, a comprehensive authority platform is going to include podcasts like yours. It's going to include great videos. It includes some of the some other media like that. Me, I do mostly writing. So for people that don't like to read, I guess I'm missing out, and I need to expand my scope. But if we're talking about a platform, I guess what I really just talked about were the tools to get your point across. Were I starting out again, I'd take a step back and actually look at some of the fundamental questions. So number one, what do I have to offer? Number two, what am I really selling? And number three, who's really my market? So just like I say in my book, one of the best ways to teach or explain anything is through stories. So instead of just rambling on with some information, I'll give you a quick sketch of kind of where I started out, and then how a couple of people helped me realize what I was doing. So whenever I first started out, before I was ghostwriting, I was copywriting, and I was working for entrepreneurs, or kind of one man shops who had a little bit of a marketing budget, but and they were looking for somebody who could write well, who could edit, and who could polish their words. So I'd find them, and I found them on job boards. I found them through referrals. But my website, I had just really left my last employer. I was thrilled to finally be self-employed, to be on my own, and I was kind of in love with the idea of entrepreneurship. And so my blog and things that I wrote on my website, it didn't really have anything to do with what I was doing for my clients. It really had more to do with me being in love with being an entrepreneur, and how great entrepreneurship was, and the things that we could do, and people who had entrepreneurship success stories. But my clients, they didn't care about any of that. They were already entrepreneurs. They were already self-employed. They had already been where I was. What they cared about was, can this guy make me sound good? Does this guy know what he's talking about? Does this guy have any areas of expertise? Does he work with service providers? Does he work with the construction industry? And so I kind of missed that really big piece of, if I'm going to have some marketing, it needs to take into account who I'm marketing to. And so really, it was, I said it was a business blog, but it was really more a personal project, because these were things that I was personally interested in. So I had a great marketing coach, helped me, reorient myself. And, one of the fundamental questions was, whenever somebody is looking for your services, what do they care about? What do they want to see from you? And they want to see, one, that I know what I'm doing, and that, two, they can trust me. And so if I want people to start hiring me as a ghostwriter, I need to start making sure that I'm talking about ghostwriting. And then I also need to make sure that I put some, I think Dan Kennedy, the marketing legend, I think he calls them qualifiers of success, or signals of credibility, I think is what he calls them. So different things that I put in my marketing for people to say, you know what, I can trust this guy. So affiliations with people. I mean, being on a podcast like this, Josh, where you have a great reputation, those kind of affiliations, those are important, because that signals to other people that I'm not just a guy out in the woods with an internet connection, that I'm actually a real professional that gets out in the world, and that I have the respect of other respected professionals, and that also that I know what I'm doing. So, Josh, honestly, for the people that are going to hire me to ghostwrite their book, I hope that they'll read my entire book. But honestly, I know that they probably won't. I know that they'll probably read, bits and pieces of it, or they'll skim through it, or they'll flip through it. For them, having my book in their hands, and they, can read a couple of paragraphs, and it sounds, hopefully in their opinion, it sounds great. I think it does. That's all they really need to say, okay, I can trust this guy. It's a sigh of relief. This guy knows what he's doing. I can hire him, and I can trust him. They don't necessarily need to understand how ghostwriting works. They just need to trust that I do. So if we're, I kind of, went all the way around the world, but the central question you asked was, what are the main pieces of an authority platform? And being able to establish that credibility and that trust, I think, are really the key elements. Because if you don't have that, or if you're not, engaging with those two ideas, then everything else is just kind of a house of cards, or it's kind of rickety ramshack, and it's going to fall over, the first time somebody comes up and thumps on it. But if you have those two pieces, then everything else that you build on that is going to be built pretty solidly.
Yeah, I think that's there's some great points, and you spoke of mentioned great Dan Kennedy, who I've actually spent a lot of time learning with and studying under. And one of the great programs that I went through of Dan's was the influential writing workshop, and it was like originally, I think it was a $12,000 program or something if you actually attended it physically. I obviously bought it and went through it digitally, but I ended up going through it like 3 or 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times. And one of the big things that he spoke about in that which was actually a few really interesting things that I want to bring up to some of your points. One of the really big aha moments for me in it, and it was like a big slap. Wow, is that really correct? Which he said was, if you're not reading fiction often, you're missing out on a big point. As he said, because in the digital marketing business and the authority business, a lot of what we're producing is fiction, and not and not so much in the sense of that maybe that you haven't like ever done or achieved anything before and that it's all made up, but that in the sense that to have the most impact and be the most influential, you need to be able to develop and produce a lot of stories to get your points across and to use metaphors to teach things, and that you should only ever hang one big learning chunk or principle on one story and one metaphor, and that you need to build your character up, and that character needs to have somewhat magic powers in a sense, which is why I often ask people, can you tell me about what's your magic power? Because, people want to learn from someone that in a sense has magic powers. But what I really wanted to go through to get across from this, and that I learned from Dan Kennedy in that influential writing seminar, was that to speak to the things of the what do I have to offer, what am I selling, and who's my market. Once you've kind of figured those things out, he says that you then need to go ahead and try and create literally a small, I guess, a booklet in a sense, filled with all of your different stories of life. So your extreme experiences of struggle and the turning points during those experiences of struggle, your founding kind of story, the story of how you kind of came to be, how you got to doing what you're doing now, your stories of success, your stories of meeting the master, your stories of going into the cave, your stories of study, there's all these different ones. There's a lot more than that as well. And then you need to hang to that all the different emotions and things that each story works with. And it was for the first time I really realized, wow, there's a huge amount of thought and work actually behind writing, and a lot more goes into it than definitely meets the eye.
Yeah, it looks just like, a couple of words on page and, some paper and glue, but God, sometimes it can almost be a monumental task.
And I think maybe that I might be making it sound probably a little bit harder than maybe it is at first. I don't think you maybe need to go to that level of depth. But the simple thing in there, and I want to ask if you agree with this, Derek, is that essentially a lot of what you communicate, you really need to be using stories. Is that kind of what, do you teach something fairly similar to that, or?
Actually, I've gone back and reread my book a couple of times now that I'm on the other side of it. And in the middle of it, I almost get bogged down in preaching so hard about using stories and anecdotes and examples and people being able to relate to personal stories. People can understand information, but they can only relate to other people. And the way that they can relate to other people is through personal stories. So, Josh, you're preaching to the choir here. Absolutely. The other point you said that I absolutely love and appreciate you sharing is how important it is to read fiction. I know lots of professionals who say, I don't have time to read fiction. My time is so valuable. The only thing that I can read is information that's going to make me, better and more efficient and faster and better, stronger, and the $1 Million Man, blah, blah, blah. So number one, good writing reading good writing makes you a better writer. And even if you're not writing, just the idea, like you say, it can make you a better storyteller. So whether that's in a podcast or whether that's even interviewing, people and talking about magic powers and going into the cave and how did you slay the dragon, people love a good story. And number 3 is that, Josh, reading fiction keeps us human. Reading about somebody's trials and tribulations, or reading about something that happened to somebody that just broke them down. I mean, those are the things that really keep us in touch with human side. They keep us from becoming autonomous robots. And whenever we're interacting with our clients, they don't want to interact with information. They want to interact with a person, a real live human being who has freckles and bad breath, and somebody that's alive. And fiction helps us keep in touch with that very human side of us.
Absolutely. So let's, Derek, look at these 3 points that you came up with here. So let's say someone's figured out they kind of understand now what they've got to offer. They understand what they're selling, and they've got some degree of understanding or clarification around who their market is, and they're ready to get a blog up or a platform up. It might not just a blog, it's their platform up, and they've got their logo, they've got their name, everything. What are the first potentially 10 pieces of cornerstone content that they should be thinking about getting on that platform?
That's a really good question, Josh. I want to make sure that I've got a really good answer for your listeners. A couple of important things, and I don't know if I'll actually hit 10 since I'm just talking off the top of my head. One is that they need to have a couple of success stories. So they need to have a couple of client stories that they can actually write in story form that show that one their potential clients can relate to. That's my that's who I am. That's where I am. So this guy, he works with people like me. And then in that story, they need to be able to demonstrate that their client had a real problem that they couldn't solve without the entrepreneurs, the content marketers' help, and that they helped them, and that this is what happened. So ideally, you should have 3 of those, because if you just have one, then it looks like you just helped a friend, and maybe they could have done it anyway. If you have 3, then it actually establishes a little bit of credibility. I would also have an origin. Let me just quickly ask just a quick bit about that. Would they be blog posts, do you think, or maybe little case studies that are downloadable? Probably blog posts would be best, do you think, with maybe a little bit of multimedia even possibly? Yeah, because whenever somebody's just stumbling upon you, they're not going to. They're often not going to invest the time to read a full report or full PDF or even sometimes even a full book, depending on their problem. They want a couple of things that say you should stay on this web page and you should stay listening to this guy or lady. So yeah, I think probably a couple of blog posts. Even a video, people love a video, a couple of minutes of video. So in that video, but success stories they don't often work as good in a video. So for a little 2 or 3 minute video, I would probably have something like that. I've got one on my homepage right now, and it really speaks to the author's problem. So this is your problem. So if you can, in just a couple of minutes in a video, convey that you understand exactly what your potential client is going through, exactly what their problem is. I mean, even getting down to little details for my clients, it's they have all these ideas and they sit down at the computer screen and they go blank. And that's happened to just about every person that I know. But me being able to relate that experience signals to them, wow, this guy really gets it. So having a video is probably or definitely one of those top 10 things that you're looking for. In there, I would absolutely have, if you're starting out, I would absolutely have a downloadable report, even if it's not something, in print, just a nice polished PDF, even if it's only 10 pages. And in those 10 pages, or 20 pages or whatever it is, having a really a good conversation with your potential client, and not just an infomercial, but really kind of getting in there, talking about their problems, talking about different solutions, talking about different ways that other people have done, bringing in other resources for them. So having something that they can download and take away, something they could print out and have in their hands. That's another big piece. If they have the time and the money, I would absolutely have a book. I think that being able to start your business with having a book, and an actual book that they can, you can send them in the mail, that they can hold in their hands. There's just not a more powerful tool than that. I know that that's probably beyond the reach of a lot of people who are just, starting out, who are just launching their business. But I mean, there's not another way to convey authority and trust and credibility than having literally written the book on the subject.
I think you were going to mention as well, when I kind of started to ask you some questions about origin stories, maybe?
Yes. Yeah. So what's your origin story? So why are you doing what you're doing? So Josh, if I were to ask you, how did you get into, SEO, and how did you get into authority marketing? You could probably tell me either a funny story or a heartbreaking story or an inspiring story about why you're doing what you're doing. So there's this cliche. We have it in the States. I don't know if y'all use it in other English speaking parts of the world. But a little cliche that says that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And it's true.
Interestingly, I've just got to add to that as well, which is fascinating that you brought that up. Dan Kennedy also in that influential writing workshop said when he first heard that, said he thought, God, more of that ridiculous wussy hushy mush. But then he said that he realized years later that actual statement really actually was bang on, and that in your writing and in everything that you're producing, if you can convey that and have people believe it, that is 75% of the battle.
Exactly, because anybody can offer advice or conflicting opinions, or I'm a professional or expert in this, and so it really comes down to who can your client trust, and if they know the person behind the information, the man behind the curtain, if you will, then they can trust the source, then they can trust the information. So having an origin story that makes you human, that shows people this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, that all of a sudden makes you a trustworthy source. And once they trust you, then they can listen to the advice that you're putting out there. So having your origin story, whether it's in your book or whether it's a blog post or something like that, definitely something like that should be in your bio or your about page. In my bio page, I have a paragraph that's kind of the short. If you're going to do, press kit, media kit, or whatever, but then underneath that, I have kind of more of a story. In my, I talk about being in love with business books, how I was introduced to business books by all people of a Brazilian missionary. He introduced me to, he lent me his old copy of Stanley Marcus, one of the main guys at Neiman Marcus, his book Quest for the Best. And up to that point, I had never read a business book. I had read, all my, literature and fantasy and teen fantasy and the classics and that kind of stuff. And I fell in love because all of a sudden here's a guy who's talking about business and entrepreneurship, which is something that I was deeply, I was keen on. But I had no idea that there was such a thing as business books. I never wandered over into that part of the bookstore. I always was in, the books that I was familiar with and that I loved. And as I, so got me reading a lot of other business books, and I really began to see, the power of business for good. How there were lots of people who had started a business, they improved their lives. Instead of making, $30,000 a year, they were making $300,000 a year, and how much of a better life that they had. And then they'd hire employees, and then how well they treated their employees, and they hired their employees from, companies that they were working for that they hated. They got to come work in a place that they loved, and they made great money. So just how entrepreneurship could turn into these places that really made a difference in people's lives, and then how in aggregate, if you have a lot of people doing that, how it can raise the standards of living for a community or a region or even a nation. And that's actually what got me to get my master's in economic development, because I wanted to be a part of helping that happen in other places. The Great Recession happened, and I wasn't able to get a job in my field, so I got a job in business, but still wound up in copywriting. And so I eventually, was able to migrate over to ghostwriting business books, and now I get to help other people write books that are gonna be read by hundreds or thousands of people who are going to use those books to improve their professional lives and the businesses that they're a part of, to help improve the quality of life for millions of people. That's why I write business books. And so I know that was long. I wanted to give your readers an example of an origin story. And that's kind of it. So you have, a couple of neat details in there: Brazilian missionary, Stanley Marcus, quest for the best. Then you have kind of the challenges that I faced. Great Recession. I wasn't able to find a job, and I could go deeper into the hardships that I faced. But then the happy ending is that now I'm doing what I love doing, and I get to do what I love by helping other people get what they want. So I'm a business ghostwriter, and obviously I make money at what I'm doing. I make a lot of it, thank God. But it's not about me making money. It's about me helping my clients write books that are going to make their clients have better lives. So all of a sudden you feel good about working with me, because you think that I actually care about what I do, which I do. I mean, I truly believe everything I just said, which an origin story needs to be sincere. If you lie, or if you try to pull the wool over people's eyes or deceive them, it's not going to work. You need to be real and authentic in what you do. And I think that's actually part of authority. I mean, we probably don't have time to explore that, but I think you probably have some neat thoughts on that idea about sincerity and authenticity. So I'm sorry, I've been rambling. I'll turn it back over to you.
No, that was great, Derek. Thanks for sharing. I'm very happy that you went into that, and I think we probably to start diving into authenticity and being authentic and really conveying the truest sense of yourself is all very important stuff, but it would probably really need a good whole show to dive into the topic. And it's still one of these topics that even for me, I'm still learning about and really trying to get it right, because it's not necessarily just about outright telling everybody everything about yourself. It's also, you've all got to be a little tactful with the way you use your authenticity, and like, you always want to be authentic and kind of telling the truth, but there are certain settings where you increase and the level of openness and the amount of your vulnerability that you're sharing, but then always remember to tie on a lesson to the thing that happened through being vulnerable, or what have you, so that it's strength and vulnerability and authenticity are always combined, which was something really interesting that I actually learned at a seminar from an authenticity professional just the other day here in Bangkok. But I'd love to maybe have you back on again in the future, and we can maybe dive into that a little deeper as well, Derek. But coming just not too far away from time, I know that I'd love to hear a little bit about your book, the Business Book Bible, and what you're kind of teaching in that, and what people can take away from reading your book, Derek.
We've been actually talking about different aspects of it throughout the whole show, talking about using stories, talking about how to get these things out of your head and onto paper. So, Josh, in being a business book ghostwriter, one of the things that frustrated me was that I didn't really have anywhere to turn to learn my craft. I had to learn it the hard way. I learned, writing, and I learned ghostwriting from a great ghostwriter, Claudia Suzanne, out in Orange County, has a whole program set up. But that was, ghostwriting in general. And whenever you look at books on how to write, they're either how to put commas together and grammar and punctuation, or they deal with general nonfiction or how to write a memoir. Or if you look at books on that deal with anything on business books, they skip over the whole point of writing the book, and they go straight to how to land an author and how to get an agent and how to be a bestseller but there's never been a book out there about how to actually write the thing in the first place. So after writing a number of or ghostwriting a number of books and writing a lot of my own material, I've put together a book that kind of takes you through the whole process from, I don't have, anything on paper, and how you go through a 5-step process to get everything out of your head and onto paper, get it edited, get it polished, how long your book should be, being professional, being positive in it, how to appropriately use personal stories, how to use client stories, especially whenever you have to be careful about revealing client information, how to present yourself as an authority, how to gain somebody's trust without them dismissing you as just a flake. It's every question that I've had to wrestle with, either on my own or on behalf of my authors. All the things that we've worked through. I've got a whole chapter in there on how to pick a winning title for your book, which really the most important words of your book is the title on the cover. Because if somebody doesn't pick up your book in the first place, then everything else is for naught, right? How to write your bio, how to get blurbs. I mean, it's the whole gamut. It's everything you need to know to actually get the book written in the first place. And once you get it written, then you can get a proofreader, or then you can worry about where the commas go. Then you can worry about, getting an agent. But none of that other stuff matters unless you have a great book to start with. So I've written the book. And in fact, Matt Pollard, he's how we got connected. His blurb for my book was actually that I might be writing myself out of a job because I'm teaching people how to actually write a business book on their own, which is it's a pretty high compliment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's what the book is about. My intention was I can only ghostwrite for a handful of authors a year. I can coach, a few more, but really for the sheer number of people that are out there that are writing business books, there's really nowhere else for them to turn to. So I've written this book for it to be their go-to guide so they can have a great start, have great ideas, have all their questions answered, and have not only the knowledge but the confidence to move forward with writing something great on their own.
Yeah, fantastic. And do you ghostwrite other content as well, Derek, or just books?
I specialize in full-length business books. So for some of my authors that I've written their book for them, we'll work together after that, because I know exactly how they talk, I know how they think, I know the jokes that they would use. But that really starts with doing a full-length book to start with. So that's really my specialty.
Sure. And I guess once you've got a book as well, would you say that you can pull just loads and loads and loads of blog content and audio content and video content and whole events for that matter out of the book, the content in the book?
Well, your book is the cornerstone for your marketing for forever. It's going to be with you. I mean, look at Tom Peters or a Dan Kennedy or John Maxwell or Brian Tracy. They've had some of their books out for 20 years. So Absolutely. That book is going to be the cornerstone of your marketing going forward. And it can inspire. You can expand on things like just with the chapter on titles. So I have an entire workbook that includes the content from the chapter on titling, but it goes further to go through different exercises, to go through some other things. Same thing with the bios. I have a section on how to write a bio, but then I went and wrote a full-length supplemental workbook on going through some of the 20 best-selling author bios and what they could have done for their book to have even been more successful. So absolutely, it can spur all kinds of content around.
Fantastic. And I mean, for cover design and things like that, do you usually recommend people go to 99 Designs, or do you have other recommended sources?
That's actually something, a topic I cover in my book. And I might actually refer to 99 Designs. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't, Josh. If you're going to take the time to put together a full-length book, you need to do it right. And to do it right means getting a professional cover designer, especially somebody who has dealt with business books, because business book covers, they're different. Business book covers, if you go into that section of the bookstore, Josh, you know that you're in the business book section. It doesn't, cookbooks look like cookbooks. Romance novels, they always have Fabio on the cover holding a damsel in distress on his arms. You know you're in the romance section. Business books look like business books. And so you have to have a professional cover designer who knows what business books looks like. Now, 99 Designs and some of the other ones, they have some very talented people on there. And I've seen some pretty good looking designs come out of that, designs that, I mean, they look like great designs, but whenever you put it next to a business book, you say, oh, wow, it looks like a great cover, but it doesn't really look like a business book. So if you were to put it on the shelf of a bookstore, people would say, oh, well, the book's misshelved because it's obviously, it looks like, The Life of Pi, or it looks like The Great Gatsby. It doesn't look like a cover that should be in here in the business book section.
For sure. So excellent stuff. Look, Derek, before we say goodbye, I'd love it if you could just let everybody know all the different ways they can find out more about you and your book, and how they might be able to get in contact with you, and then perhaps share just a little bit of parting advice as well, if you can, please, buddy.
Sure, I'd love to. So my book, The Business Book Bible, official launch is February the 3rd. It's going to be available on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and a number of other outlets like that. Best way to keep in touch is to go to dereklewis.com and subscribe to my newsletters. That's DEREKLEWIS.com. Media content, everything else that's on there. Another great resource that I offer, I have a free forum online. It's a LinkedIn group, Writing Business Books. We've got dozens of ghostwriters and successful authors, agents, even a couple of small press publishers on there, and the forum is all about exactly that, writing business books. So any of those three ways will get you into all the other ones. But to offer a little bit of a parting advice, Josh, most people are scared to death of writing. They know that they should be writing. They know that they should be doing some blog posts and this, that, and the other, but they're scared to death, either because they had a horrible English teacher, because they think that they're not smart. It's amazing how many people I've worked with that are actually dyslexic or have other learning disabilities. They've been successful business professionals, but in spite, or perhaps because of their learning challenges. Josh, if you've been doing life for any amount of time, 5 or 6 years, you have some valuable information and expertise that other people want to know about, and they are more than willing to overlook a misplaced comma, or a subjunctive that doesn't quite add up, or starting sentences with conjunctions, which is actually okay. It's a myth that you can't do that. If your content information is valuable, they can overlook all the rest of that if what you're offering is A, valuable, and B, sincere. So I encourage anybody, having something out there is better than having nothing out there. So trust your gut, trust your instincts, trust your experience, trust your expertise, and share something valuable with the world. If you share something that is actually worthwhile, then people are going to return to you with their business and with their attention and with their dollars likewise.
Fantastic. Well, awesome stuff, Derek. I really appreciate you coming on to share your wisdom with the Tropical Entrepreneur listeners and the syndicate. And as well, this will probably be airing on Authority Factory as well, which is my new site and new podcast and new digital magazine as well, which this content may well go in there as well. So to all the listeners out there in the syndicates, thank you for listening. And Derek, thank you for coming on to share.
My pleasure, Josh. I really appreciate having the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Tropical Entrepreneur Show. You can download your free guide to the top 5 tools to grow your location independent business fast by visiting tropicalentrepreneur.com, and we'll see you tomorrow.